Welcome to War Games on Toast, all you wonderful people. I am once again back talking about the latest edition of Warcry. However, this time I am not talking about the Beasts of Chaos. If you have read the title, which I assume you have, you will know I am talking about the Hunters of Huanchi, who come with the brand new Sundered Fate box, courtesy of Games Workshop. Now, of course, this box has only recently released, so the amount of games I've played with it are fairly low. However, I think I've got a fairly decent grasp on the general feel of the list and how these models work and how you can take these models and then use them and build them to make a quality list. And that's what this video is all about. It's how to start playing the Hunters of Huanchi. But before we get started, please consider dropping a subscribe, a like, and a comment letting me know what you want to see next. I think it's safe to say our next video will likely be about the Jade Obelisk, but after that, I'm open to suggestions. Please feel free to drop that comment, let me know, and I'll make that a reality. But all that aside, let's get started with the video. So, who are the Hunters of Huanchi? Well, simply put, these are the elite stealth operatives of the celestial Seraphon undead space lizards of the Age of Sigmar universe. These guys are incredibly fast, incredibly stealthy, and very hard to get your hands on. However, the trade-off is that they're quite squishy. So let's go into the pros and cons and really break down what makes this faction tick. Like I alluded to earlier, the Hunters of Huanchi are very sneaky, they are very fast, very tricky on the tabletop, and honestly, the biggest draw is that they are interesting. There is not many factions that do what the Hunters of Huanchi want to do on the tabletop, and this makes them such an interesting and unique faction. It makes me, personally, want to play them an awful lot and really break down how they work and their unique playstyle. Now, of course, there are some downsides to the Hunters, and this is the fact that they are very squishy. I mean, we are talking toughness 2, 8 wounds. The toughest unit in this entire warband is toughness 3, 12 wounds. I mean, these guys will go down to a stiff breeze if you don't play them right. And this is also then thrown into the fact that they have low damage. The Hunters of Huanchi across the board are wet noodles in combat, low strength, low damage numbers. Basically, don't expect to kill much with this list unless you're going to dedicate an awful lot of models to try and chip something away. And that really isn't the playstyle Hunters want to go into, so if you find yourself bum rushing a single model, you might find yourself getting punished quite heavily in return if that maneuver fails. Very unforgiving, but, you know, that's the ebb and flow of Warcry. That's the ebb and flow of the faction right there. So with the pros and cons out of the way, let's quickly just dabble in the reactions and the abilities that the Hunters of Huanchi have access to. Firstly, their reaction is somewhat amazing. It is called Slippery. And this is, in short, a fighter can make this reaction after they've been allocated damage points by a melee attack action. This fighter can then make a disengage action. On the surface, this seems quite powerful. You take a hit in melee. If they don't kill you, you move away. You can't get hit again. And this is what I thought initially. But then it dawned on me as I was just flicking through the rulebook that there's actually more to this than meets the eye. It's a bit of a transformer. So damage in Warcry is allocated a single damage point at a time. Just one. So if a guy hits you with a big axe and that does 5 damage on one swing, that doesn't matter. You take 5 damage in increments of 1 damage up to 5. This is a big deal with Slippery. The second you take that single point of damage out of that, hypothetical 5, you can activate Slippery, disengage, and those other pips of damage they don't hit. So you only take the 1. You don't take the 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. It doesn't matter. You only take the 1. This is incredible. This actually makes, in melee, the Hunters of Huanchi, if they have the AP, some of the hardest to kill models in the entire game. They have 8 HP, which means you have to hit them 8 times with single points of damage to take them down in an ideal scenario. Now this falls apart when it comes to ranged attacks. It falls apart if you get surrounded and you can't disengage out safely. There's a lot of ways to play around this on your opponent's side. There's a lot of ways you can mess up. Maybe you just don't have the AP. There's a lot of things that can go wrong here, but in a vacuum, Slippery is quite possibly one of the most impactful defensive buffs in the entire game. It is crazy to think about. And then we go on to abilities. These are also very interesting, and we're going to start with our doubles. We have 2, and that is the Agile Climbers, boom, and Envenom Weapons, boom. So until the end of the fighter's activation, do not count vertical distance moved when this fighter is climbing. That's Agile Climbers, and that's good, okay? We'll go later on, but the Chameleon Skinks have a movement of 6. This is substantially faster than most things in the game. This is going the same speed as Dragon Ogres. The average movement in Warcry is about 4, and you're going 6. Some things just move 3. Dwarfs move 3. Some of the Jade Obelisk move 3. Some Stormcast only move 3. You're moving twice as fast as them with Skinks. Being able to ignore vertical terrain and just scurry up towers, scurry up platforms, and just get up there and get to safety makes an already fast faction even faster. Excellent double. Not only that, this can be used on every single model in your faction, bar the Terror Wings, which we'll get into later on. And the next one is, of course, Envenomed Weapons. This adds 1 to the damage points allocated by every hit and critical hit from the next attack action made by a fighter. This can be used by everything in the faction again, bar the Terror Wings. Again, you'll see a theme here. The Terror Wings don't get to do much when it comes to abilities, but everything else can do this. This is quite okay. This can be quite substantial in the right circumstance, but also fairly in different ones. Your guys don't do a lot of damage. Your dart pipes, your blow pipes, strength 1. You're going to struggle to do damage. Only 2 shots, you're going to struggle. In close combat, you only strength 3. So anything with any amount of defense, they're not going to care. If you're against anything with a defensive reaction, like say the Jade Obelisk reduces all damage received by 1, then this Envenom Weapon is just, it's not going to do anything. They're going to activate the reaction potentially, and then boom, they're going to absorb the hit. You're going to waste your dice. And you know, dice are very important, so if they're burning 1 AP to burn 2 of your dice, okay, that kind of sucks. But Envenom Weapons does have its place, specifically on some of the stronger, quote-unquote stronger units in the faction, which we'll cover soon. And it's also somewhat good on your melee units. Blowpipes, not so much. They're a little bit undercooked to make the dart pipes worth the envenoming for the most part, but there's play here. There is play here. It's good. It's definitely good. There's just a lot of times where this could just do nothing. You're not there to kill. Your combat potential is very limited here, and this does help, but it doesn't really help enough. So that's where we stand on the Envenomed Weapons. Now this one is quite interesting. Boom, the Hurled Bowlers. Bish bash bosh, Hurled Bowlers. Pick a visible enemy fighter within 8 inches of this fighter and roll a number of dice equal to the value of the ability. If just one of those dice scores 6, that fighter makes 1 fewer actions in this battle round to a minimum of 0. And the added effect there is if they have 0 AP, they can't activate at all. They're just done. This is incredibly powerful, but so dice dependent, it's not even funny. Hurled Bolas is like a net, but better in some ways and worse in others. The odds of you getting 2 high triples and getting the double AP reduction off, that's not going to happen. That's just not a thing that's going to happen very often. It's nothing worth thinking about. Where this shines is just taking off that 1 AP. Reducing anything's AP by 1 means they can't move an attack without burning their own dice, if they've got that ability in their pool at the time. Reducing the AP by 1 means they can't double attack you in combat. It means they can't attack then disengage. It really limits what they can. It can stop things from double moving and escaping with objectives, or even getting to an objective, or to a ley line, or to a quarter. There's a lot that can happen here, and the play potential is substantial. The trickery with Hurled Bolas is incredible, and the amount of Bolas you can take in a list is mind-boggling. There are so many units that can take Hurled Bolas and use it on the battlefield. It truly is staggering. But it's so unreliable. Needing the 6 is such a cost. You need to have, I want to say, it probably isn't worth using if you don't have at least maybe a 555. You could maybe risk the 4. Anything below 4 though, and you're putting a lot of weight on a very random chance here. The odds start not being in your favour to get this off effectively. Bearing in mind, nets go off on a 3+. I believe it's a 3+ for the most part. Bolas on a 6. It's hard to dedicate the dice to Bolas. But despite that, the power of Bolas is so great that you're going to use it. You're going to take the risk, but don't make the mistake of taking too many Bola-based units in your army. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself lacking actions to do. You're going to limit yourself in combat. You're going to take too many Bolas, and then you're going to find yourself a little bit high and dry when those numbers just don't come up. There's a lot of RNG involved here, and yeah, don't go too heavy in Bolas, but absolutely take some Bolas. That's where we're standing on this. And another reason Bolas kind of take a little bit of a step back is because Bellow of the Carnosaur exists, and this is another triple. Only one model in the faction can use that, and that is Huanchi's Claw. Now, Huanchi's Claw is a really powerful model, but you only have one in the Sundered Fate box, which means you can't really have too many of them unless you go to eBay or convert your own. Now, Bellow of the Carnosaur is why you would take it, or at least one of the reasons. So, what does it do? Well, you pick an enemy fighter within 6 inches. Boom. Until the end of the battle round, subtract 1 from the move characteristic of that fighter to a minimum of 1, and subtract 1 from the damage points allocated by each hit and critical hit from attack actions made by that fighter, also to a minimum of 1. This is really powerful. This is more powerful than a lot of movement manipulation abilities, because not only does it have that movement manipulation effect, which is substantial. You're already fast. If you are destroying someone's movement even further, you aren't getting caught. This makes your average movement fighter so much slower. It's not even funny. You can keep a lot of your skinks safe by cleverly using Bellow of the Carnosaur to slow everything down. You could even activate Bellow of the Carnosaur, wait, Bellow of the Carnosaur on your next activation and get the double off if you've got the triple dice to do that. The best part of it, of course, is that you can also reduce damage. This is especially good if you are doubling up. So say you're against a particularly tough fighter with like minimum damage 3 and a good crit, maybe 3, maybe a 6 crit, maybe higher. Well, boom, you can double up on Bellow of the Carnosaur on a good turn and completely neuter them, which lets you more or less ignore them. Powerful doesn't do this ability justice. There's a lot of play here. A lot of these abilities have a lot of play. And the Bellow of the Carnosaur is outstandingly good. And unlike Hurled Bolas, the other triple, this triple doesn't have a dice requirement outside of just having a triple. If you have a low triple, Bellow of the Carnosaur works. If you have a high triple, well, maybe consider throwing Bolas instead. You know what I mean? That's sort of trade-off. If you get a high triple, Hurled Bolas becomes much more enticing. If you have a low triple, Bellow of the Carnosaur all the way. It's way too good not to take. Bellow, go, 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 boom, boom, boom. Just mess with people's game plans. If you've got multiple Huanchi claws on the board, which is possible, man, you can do some work. You can do some work with having 2 of these on the board and knocking out maybe 2 units from the field if you have the dice. Dice are always the great equalizer here, but man, it's a good ability. Do not underestimate it. And our final triple is the Call of the Hunt. This can only be used by the Chameleon Skink Hornblower or the Chameleon Skink with the cool Golden Duta. Pick a friendly fighter that has both the Hunters of Huanchi rune mark and the Beast rune mark that is within 9 inches of the Hornblower. That fighter makes a bonus move action. Then pick a visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of that fighter that made the bonus move action and allocate a number of damage points to that fighter equal to the value of this ability. So when compared to Hurled Bolas and Bellow of the Carnosaur, how good is this ability? After a bit of pondering on the subject, this ability is actually really good because Terror Wings are really good. So this gives you a free move. And when your guy has 10 inches of movement, well, now you can move 30 inches in a turn, and that is the entire length, I believe, of a Warcry table. You can go anywhere and do anything. In a game based on quarters, you can get your Terror Ring into any quarter. If on ley lines, you can get your Terror Ring on any ley line. There are so many objective-based games where Terror Wings can just absolutely shine with this. And the chip damage is just a nice added benefit. Would you use this to get your Terror Wings into combat? Maybe. Terror Wings aren't bad in combat. They're not great. So maybe you would do that for the extra chip, especially if you get that sneaky high triple, maybe the 6. So you're going in there, landing that big 6 hit on the fly-in, then you activate and get the double attack. You can probably take out some chaff, maybe take out some archers. There's a lot of play. The Terror Wings are very good. They're very good at taking out chaff. They're very fast, and this makes them faster and more deadly. So Call of the Hunt is another very powerful triple in a faction that has 3 very powerful triples. This is possibly one of the most stacked triples section I've seen in a long time. These are all very good, and they will all see play. Guaranteed, all of them. And then this leads to our final one. This is the Quad. We're talking about hit and run here. Hit and run. This fighter makes a bonus move action or a bonus disengage action. Then this fighter makes a bonus attack action or a bonus move action. This is incredible. Unfortunately, you can't use this on Terror Wings, so you can't get the 40-inch move with the Terror Wings if you really wanted to. But you can use this on anything else that isn't a Terror Wing. The entire faction can do this, and this makes your guys so quick to the point of lunacy. Now, I'm not going to go into this too much because I think the power of this is fairly obvious, but just imagine being able to pick up a relic in a relic game or an objective game where you have to pick something up, a treasure or whatever, right? And then using hit and run. Well, now you can move 4 times in that turn, and with a movement of 6, you can get to just about anywhere. Again, a Warcry board is only 30 inches in length. I believe it's about 30 inches. Well, you've just moved 24 in 1 turn. That's incredible. That is incredible to think about. You can, if you have the opportunity to take an objective, you can take this, hit and run, and that objective is is taken to safety, guaranteed taken to safety. And there are very few things in the game that can catch you at that point. In fact, it is very unlikely that anything without a similarly powerful ability will be able to actually get to you and stop you from escaping. And man, it's good. It's very good. Hit and run, very good. It's all about the movement though. That bonus attack action, that's not quite as enticing as the extra moves. Those move actions, it fits with the Hunters so well, and it makes an already mobile faction even more mobile. Very, very powerful. So, with the abilities out of the way, let's quickly, this is getting to be quite a long video, let's dabble with the actual units we have access to in the Sundered Fates box. First things first, we have our Chameleon Skink Alpha. This dude can come with either a blowpipe or a Moonstone Club. Moonstone Clubs are basically bolas, and the dart pipe is just a dart pipe. Of the two, now their stat lines are very, very basic. They only have 12 wounds, 2 toughness, and their attacks are very, very poor. I mean, we're looking at, like, with the dart pipe, we're looking at like 2 attacks, strength 1, 1-2 damage. Terrible. With the Moon Club, a bit better. You gain a nice buff to toughness, going to toughness 3. You're still only 12 wounds, and your attacks become 4 attacks at strength 3, 1-3 damage. So the Moon Club is probably the best option here. When it comes to a leader, you want that leader to be as tanky as possible, so you don't get assassinated by a wayward arrow. And yeah, the Moonstone Club Alpha is probably the best way to go here. Plus, it's better in combat. Those 4 attacks can do something, whilst the blowpipe is no better than a basic Skink's blowpipe. So the blowpipe is a hard sell. Not only that, they are the same points. So I would say definitely go with the Moon Club Alpha here. Next up, we have Huanchi's Claw. And this guy is something to write home about. So, at only 75 points, this guy has 10 wounds, toughness 3. Already, that's good for the Hunters. Toughness 3, 10 wounds, toughest thing on the board apart from the Alpha, okay? Of course, he gains access to the Carnosaur's Bellow, or the Bellow of the Carnosaur ability, very powerful, but more importantly, his Javelin is very good. It's an 8-inch ranged spear javelin-y thing. 2 attacks, strength 3, 1-4 damage. Again, that's pretty weak when compared to most weapons in the game. Let's be fair here, but compared to every other weapon in this faction, this is the best weapon by far. Like, by far. 8-inch range is the longest range. 2 attacks is on par with any other range attack in the faction. Strength 3 is by far the strongest, and 1-4 damage does by far the most damage. This guy is very, very powerful. You can take as many as you like. He looks like a character. He looks more elite and more character-like than your Alpha. He is not a character. He is a fighter. You can take as many of these as you want, and he is only 75 points, which for the record is only 5 points more than your basic Skink. So if you really wanted to get a bit gamey, really wanted to sort of go competitive, you're probably going to want to take a bunch of horns of Huanchi horns, or Horn of Huanchi, whatever they're called, because these are very, very good for their points. For our more basic troops, we have our basic Chameleon Skinks, 70 points, fairly cheap. Movement 6, of course. Toughness 2, 8 wounds. This is where things get really, really scary. 8 wounds is like Ungor level of wounds, so very squishy. Toughness 2 is possibly one of the squishiest things in the entire game. Now, you can buff them to toughness 3 if you take that Moon Club. But here's the thing. I don't think the Moon Club is worth taking en masse because you want to stay away from the enemy. That's the thing. You're squishy. If you take the Moon Club, you're pushing your faction towards more hitting things in the head with a stick. And with your Moon Club, you only have 3 attacks, strength 3, 1-3 damage. You aren't going to kill much. Even buffed with envenomed weapons to 2-4 damage, you're still only strength 3. The turnover on damage is not going to be high. The average toughness in the game is probably, I believe, is 4. If anything's got a shield, it's probably going to be 5. Like, I mean, come on, you're not doing much here with the guys in close combat. And again, 1-inch range, oof, man, that is not a good range. Like, you want some, you definitely want to take some, because the extra toughness is nice and the hurled bowlers is nice, but we would definitely recommend going heavy on the dart pipes. Dart pipes aren't great. Again, range 6, 2 attacks, strength 1, 1-2 damage. Terrible. These things are terrible. Even buffed to be 2-3 with infinite weapons, these are not going to do damage. And again, you will have the toughness 2. But the trick is to not get into combat because you don't want to get hit in the head. So the toughness isn't that much of a deterrent apart from against other range attacks, which we will get into later on. But we would definitely say of the two, definitely go blowpipes, heavier on the blowpipes than the Moonstone clubs. But don't throw away all your Moonstone clubs. There are some uses here. And finally, we have the Hornblower, or at least finally for the actual chameleons. Hornblowers are about this. They are the same price as a regular chameleon skink. They have all of the same abilities and whatnot as the regular chameleon skinks, but they also interact with terror rings. They come in 2 variants. They come with the Moonstone Club or the Blow Dart, and again, of the two, we would recommend going Blow Dart. The Blow Dart is slightly more expensive here, but neither variant gains that nice +1 toughness. So even with the Moonstone Club, the Hornblower is only toughness 2. You do not want a Hornblower with toughness 2 in close combat with anything. So Blowpipe will encourage you to stay away. You've got some more chip damage. Definitely Blowpipe the Hornblower. And then this finally leads us to the Terror Wing, which is very quickly becoming my favourite unit in the entire warband. This guy is only 90 points. Bear that in mind, he's 90 points with movement 10, toughness 3, 8 wounds. This guy is just as tough as your Moonstone Club skinks, but he has +4 movement. His damage characteristic, his profile, is identical to a Moonstone Club skink. Very good. Throw in the Hunter's Call or Call of the Hunt ability. This thing is incredible. That extra movement is well worth the very small point increase. You're only paying 20 more points and you're gaining 4 movement. That is a huge stat increase for a very low points cost increase. So yeah, Terror Wings, you want to take as many Terror Wings as Sundered Fates gives you. You might even want to get more Terror Wings and run a couple more than the standard 3. Very potent. So with all of that done, we've done a lot of talking. Let's look at the sample list. We have chosen this. Boom. We have a Chameleon Skink Alpha with Moon Club. We have a Chameleon Skink with Hornblower and Dart Pipe, 1 Huanchi's Claw, 3 Terror Wings, 5 Chameleon Skinks with Dart Pipes, and 2 Chameleon Skinks with Moonstone Clubs. So the thought behind this list is fairly simple. We want a bowler in every single one of our battle groups. So hammer, dagger, and shield, we want a bowler in every one. So we have the option to bowler any threat the enemy has available. We went very heavy on dart pipes because dart pipes will encourage us to stay away. It gives us chip damage and we will be staying out of combat as much as possible, and we don't want to have our guys with shields running in and getting tied up anyway. We want to keep them back for bowlers. Generally, we want to stay away from combat. This will help us do that. The 3 Terror Wings are for being a pain in the arse. These guys are, in a sense, throwaway. If you need to, throw them into a backline to kill archers, tie up archers, mess with things. Throw them into chaff with Call of the Hunt to very easily land a kill on just about anything that's got, 8, 10 wounds. You can quite easily take them out with a Terror Wing. And Huanchi's Claw, man, he's just there to debuff. He's there to throw his javelin. His javelin can be very potent. If you get the crits off, you can, maybe kill some chaff with, by throwing your spear. Very good. This is definitely the list we would recommend going for. Going with all the dart pipes we don't think is worth doing. You definitely want some toughness on the board. This way, half your warband is toughness 3, the other half is toughness 2. You have some close combat capabilities, you've got a lot of ranged, but remember the whole goal of the hunters is to be slippery, to be sneaky, to be fast, agile, and get up places, be a pain, and do the objective. You're playing the objective, you are not playing to kill. If you need to kill something for the win, you have Terror Wings, you've got some Moonstone Clubs, you've got Huanchi's Claw, you have options for that, but you will need to dedicate a lot of models to do very little on anything that's tougher than your basic throwaway chaff. So bear that in mind. Where the Hunters of Huanchi really fall apart is against a shooting-based list. Any shooting list will have a field day with the Hunters of Huanchi. Your guys are very squishy, and you can't react to range attacks. So if you get shot, you're getting shot, and you could die. Even your basic archers could probably kill a skink without much issues. If 2 archers fire at a skink, it's almost guaranteed to die. If you look at something like the humble Ungo Raider, they can, rapid fire with their bows, and that's good night for any skink it hits. It could even potentially kill your leader. There's very little counterplay when it comes to archers other than stay really, really far away or send in the Terror Wings. But if they go too heavy with ranged, then there's not much you can do. Even your Terror Wings will get shot down if they go first. They're no tougher than basic skinks. So ranged warbands, you will struggle with. Melee warbands, you will absolutely dominate. You will run circles around them. They will do nothing. And thankfully, not many factions run all ranged, let alone heavy ranged. So you should be okay in most situations. And remember target priority. If you need to kill anything, make sure you're killing those ranged units first. And that's all we have for the Hunters of Huanchi. I absolutely love this warband. These have very quickly become my new love. I've played an awful lot of Beasts of Chaos, an awful lot of the new Chaos Legion stuff, including the Centaurian Marshal, but my god, the skinks are a breath of fresh air. They are so interesting on the battlefield. I have an absolute blast playing them, and yeah, your opponent, you'll have a blast playing them. Your opponent may want to gut you and leave you for dead. They are infuriating on the other side of the table because they are so hard to get your hands on. So have a great time playing them. This is a great faction. I would say, even if the Jade Obelisk was a terrible warband, which for the record, the Jade Obelisk are not terrible. They're very fun too. Sundered Fates would almost be worth buying just for the Hunters of Huanchi by themselves. If you aren't into buying the big box sets, that's of course fine. The Hunters will eventually be released as a single box in the future by Games Workshop, like the Rockmire Creed and the Horns of Hashut. So bide your time and get excited. There's a lot of play here, especially if you start throwing in some Seraphon units, which we didn't get into today because the video is already coming into that 40-minute length. So, we'll leave it there. And that is it for me today. Thank you for watching. It is greatly appreciated. This is a much longer video than usual, but I really wanted to get my thoughts down on paper? In audio? I don't know. I wanted to get my thoughts somewhere. Let's just say. If you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the longer form, if you learned anything about the Hunters, then please leave a comment, a like, and drop that subscribe, and click that notification bell. It helps the channel more than you will ever know, and it lets me know you want to see more content like this. I want to improve the content as much as possible and make it the best I can possibly do. This is all new to me. So any advice, any tips, anything to change, let me know, and I will make sure to try my darn diddly darndest to make that happen. Until next time, thanks for watching. Happy raiding.